I have been a beauty journalist for 27 years. And I don't know where the time has gone, but I now joke that I'm the oldest beauty journalist in the industry. And I wanted to talk about my journey towards discovering Neostrata and discovering cosmeceuticals, because I think, like most beauty journalists, and like most of your patients and your consumers, I came from a position of disappointment in the high street. I think I was very lucky when I was younger, when I became a beauty journalist fresh out of university. I never had a problem skin. So I believed the hype. I believed that you could go on a counter in a big department store and buy a miracle in a bottle. And I believe a lot of young people actually come from that position. And then what happens is, as you get older, you realize maybe that might not be the case, because you realize that it's not stopping you getting older, and you become a consumer of injectables or fillers or lasers. You become your patients. And what happened was, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when I first had Botox, nobody really knew about cosmeceuticals unless you'd made that step, unless you'd made that transition through the door into one of your clinics, into one of your high-end service providers. So Neostrata at the time was not really well known. I discovered it actually in a Spanish pharmacy, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. But people didn't really know about cosmeceuticals. They were such a new term at the time, and I remember stepping through the door to the first aesthetic practitioner I saw and seeing all the skincare, and it was literally like the blinkers had been pulled up off my eyes. And it was the first time that I'd suffered from a problem that could be solved by clinical skincare, and that problem was aging. I had never had acne, I'd never had pigmentation, I'd never had rosacea, I'd never had keratosis pilaris. So I hadn't really looked into what skincare had actually worked. I believed what the brands had told me. And then when I saw that I had problems that couldn't be solved by high street skincare, I found my passion, and that is skincare that works, clinically proven, not only on active ingredients, but also on finalized products, clinical products that worked. And so I come from a position of being your patient, coming from a position of enthusiasm for brands like Neostrata, and trust me, there aren't many of them. So what happened was I started to talk about it. I started to talk about it in my pages at the time that it also became incredibly popular. I'm part of the baby boomer generation. So I'm part of the generation that looks to sort of Madonna as being their older sister. We were never going to go quietly into the horizon and age gracefully. We just weren't. By 2020, 50% of the population are going to be 50 and older. We've got huge purse strings because we have risen a huge property wave within the UK and globally. We are intelligent, articulate, we're outspoken, we've hit the glass ceiling and smashed it, and we're looking for something that is above and beyond with our skincare. And that skincare, in my opinion, should be clinical skincare. So how do you engage people like me? Well, hopefully, people 10 and 15 years younger than me, unless they're coming in for acne or rosacea or keratosis pilaris, where you might well be engaging people 20 and above, maybe teenagers, maybe mothers bringing in their daughters. And you're coming from a difficult position because partly they're engaged already, they know they're going to spend. The minute they come over the threshold into your clinic, your practice, you know that they're going to engage, you know they're going to spend money, because otherwise they wouldn't have already made that big step. They've opened the door and they've walked through. But also you're coming from a position of problem solving, because they're coming to you because they already know that the stuff they're using isn't working, it's not making a difference. So they're coming from a position of skepticism within skincare. They're coming from a position of thinking, I'll buy into injectables, I'll buy into lasers, I'll even buy into high-end clinical treatments, but why should I buy into your skincare? Because I've already used, without naming names, the high street brands. I've already gone to the department stores, I've gone into the drugstore, into Boots, into Superdrug. Nothing works, that's why I'm here. And so you've got a sort of journey to follow with them. You've got a sort of a way of educating them that really can't be a hard sell. So you have to take them on your journey with you. And I hope that journalists like myself, and a year ago I started a YouTube channel for this very reason, because nobody was actually taking people on this journey, and actually more clinical providers are also starting YouTube channels, starting blogs, starting ways of engaging people and educating people that clinical skincare is fundamentally different from what you get on the high street. And this is what I was saying. I started off by saying, Lorna didn't know I was going to do this morning. I didn't realise that Neostrata owned exuviants. So when I knew I was coming here today, I'd already got all my Neostrata out. Now, if you could see my house, you'd know how much free skincare I get. It's shocking. If you've got no problems to solve, I can load you up with a whole host of high street skincare. But this is what has made it from my inbox, which is a carrier bag of products a day, to my pages for my readers when I'm writing about problem-solving skincare, and then onto my bathroom shelf, and then into my regime. Most of these are empty, and I want to start with this. This is how I discovered Neostrata before it had a PR in the UK. I discovered this in a Spanish pharmacy about 8 years ago. Still completely clinically active. I love it. I don't think this packaging even exists anymore, does it? It's been replaced. It's a 15% salicylic acid gel that I use on my body if I have breakouts. We were chatting earlier on, and I won't overshare at this point, but I have very dry, very coloured hair, so if I use very rich conditioners and I rinse it down my back, I get body breakouts. And this is the only thing that I think that works. I get it out and I dab it on, and it's probably hideously past its date, and it's still brilliant. It still works. So I discovered this, and then I went on to discover things that I use. I mean, I don't know if you know the Neostrata, the Exuviance glycolic body lotion. It's absolutely brilliant. It's the best thing for keratosis pilaris. I'm lucky I don't suffer from that, but I recommend it to everybody. I slept in this last night, 2 days in can, fresh off a plane, nothing hydrates like it. Night, day. These are things that I'm using in my regime, and if I tell you that probably this is 1% of everything I get offered, the fact that it's made it, a skeptical journalist in her mid-50s, onto my bathroom shelf, and I'm using it regularly, shows you that I've tested everything. This is one of the brands that I know and believe and trust, and that works. The formulating chemist down there is about to become my best friend. We've never met before, but I'm about to get his mobile number and I will stalk him for eternity. He'll rue the day he met me, trust me. So I wanted to say, how do you engage people? So that's a background from me as a journalist, as your patient, because I'm basically the person you need to sell to. And you know that patients dread the end sell. You know this. You know that you can't wait until the last minute when they're paying their bill and turn to your shelf and say, may we add on this, madam? That's not the way things happen. They come in with a budget. They already know that they've got to spend on injectables, they've got to spend on a clinical facial, they've got to spend on a laser or an IPL treatment. But you need to engage them from the very beginning, and this doesn't just work with the clinical nurses or the reception staff or the practice manager. It also starts with the doctors and the clinical practitioners. And that's because your consumer is coming to you from a place of having a hard sell. And they're also coming to you from a place of skepticism because they've tried skincare and it doesn't work. You know that because that's why they're coming to see you, because they want something that works. I was at a IMCAS recently with Allergan, and Allergan have done some research that shows that if you have a facelift and you don't have a good skincare regime, a clinically active skincare regime, you're more likely to be disappointed with the results. And that's because there are only so many things that injectables can do. There are only so many things that lasers can do. There are only so many things that fillers can do. And what you need to work with is a great textured skin, and for that you need great skincare, and that's what you need to educate rather than market, rather than sell, rather than use marketing to your consumer. This isn't simply an add-on, this is an essential part of looking your best. I remember taking my skincare seriously the first time I had Botox, and my doctor said to me while he was injecting my Botox, you do know this is the point of no return, right? This is the point at which you will stop sunbathing. You will wear a daily SPF. You will start looking after your skin and start using proper skincare. And I looked at him thinking, really, why? And he said, because Otherwise, you're going to have to come back more often, you're going to spend all this money, and you're really not going to get that much of a return on your investment. Yes, I can erase your lines, but what about your pores? What about your micropigmentation? What about your broken veins? All these things can be protected and prevented and to a degree treated with great skincare. And he got me thinking, he's right. Bearing in mind, I was getting my Botox for free. Okay, your consumer, your patient is paying. They're paying for your clinical excellence. And they need to be told that skincare, clinical skincare, is not an add-on. It's not an indulgence. It's fundamentally different from that pot of creme de la mer that they previously invested in. For the same money, and for considerably less, they can get clinically active skincare that can make a difference, that can treat their acne, treat their pigmentation, treat the fine lines, treat enlarged pores. And I think that it is literally a journey. From the minute they walk through the door, they need to know that skincare is a third or even a fourth pillar of looking great. Because why would you invest hundreds of pounds in clinical treatments and not look after the fundamental thing you're treating, which is the texture of your skin? And that really can be treated with great skincare. So we need to go on the journey of, without blinding people with science, the difference between high street skincare and clinical skincare. Clinical skincare is proven to work. Again, that's going to be a big jump for them because they're going to have seen the huge adverts where at the bottom it says with a little asterisk, tested on 15 women who believe their skin looked better. That's not clinically active skincare. I don't know if we can talk in terms of clinical trials because I think at that point you're blinding people with science, but I think you can say this has been proven to work. This has been proven to work because it's been used in trials. In a way, it's been tested the same way that drugs are tested. I mean, I always talk about, even to my readers, double-blind clinical trials, and people sort of glaze over slightly. But to me, that's the gold standard way of testing things. And you can say, yes, a company like Neostrata has tested the active ingredients. They're buying from people who are testing their active ingredients, but they're also testing finished formula products. And then, hopefully, here are the befores, here are the afters. I walked in earlier on and we met Lorna and we were just literally, I picked up all the brochures, I've got a whole host of brochures, and just flicking through those befores and afters is kind of mind-blowing. And I think it's those before and afters, it's investing in that point of sale, those brochures that show you the clinical befores and afters. In a way, the products sell themselves. Once you get them engaged and once they're buying those products, they're going to see the results. One of the things you are going to have to do, as I said before, is overcome the skepticism, their previous experience where they've tried products and they haven't really worked. They tried in their 20s and 30s when they didn't have problems to solve and they were fine. You know, they kept their skin hydrated. But they didn't actually reverse any of the product's problems. They didn't problem solve. One of the things you will have to overcome, and Cosmopolitan UK did a brilliant feature in the most recent issue, and the headline, the strapline on the front is the internet ruining your skin? Because there was a time when you just had to sort of undo some of the disinformation of glossy magazines and TV adverts. But now you've got to undo the disinformation that's out there on the internet, because the first thing a woman will do if she has a problem is Google. So she'll say, you know, red bumpy arms, Google, pigmentation, Google. And I always call myself Dr. Google, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, but the truth is that there's a lot of disinformation in there, out there on skincare at the moment. If you look at some of the biggest influencers now, they're not magazine journalists. They're bloggers, they're vloggers, they're YouTubers. One of the reasons I started my YouTube channel was to sort of try and turn back the tide of disinformation out there. And you'll see if you go on Instagram, which is the biggest growing social media market at the moment for women over 35, various people going, here's my Sunday facial, here's my 6 products I used this week, and then next week you'll tune in again, and here's my 6 products next week. That's not how clinical skincare works. That's not how efficacious skincare works. You and I all know it needs, firstly, an investment financially and then an investment in terms of time. People need to be told to step away from the internet when it comes to getting proper clinical skincare advice and turn to you guys. Turn to the experts. Turn to the people that know. And they also need to know they need an investment in time, that they're not going to see results straight away, sadly. They need to know that maybe they're going to come back to you in 3 months' time and then you're going to see the results. And once they've seen the results, they're going to get hooked in and then they're going to become a repeat purchaser. And then you've won them forever. That's the brand's dream return consumer. So you need to undo the history of them being missold high street skincare. Then you need to undo the disinformation that's out there via Google. And then once you get them involved on the journey of selling a product to them that works with clinical evidence to back it and brilliant before and after pictures that solve their particular problems, they will be engaged. And they will realise that skincare is not an add-on. Just going to keep an eye on the time. Point of sale is very important at this point. As I said, you don't want to grab them at that point where they're just about to pay and they've just come to terms with the fact that they're kind of, how much is this going to cost? And they're just putting their credit card in. It needs to come from the moment that you have the first consultation. It needs to be, I know you've come to me for Botox, but have you thought about the texture of your skin? Have you thought about you've come to me for IPL or laser, but what about moving forward? What SPF are you using? What cleanser are you using? You do know that you can prevent some of these products, these problems returning. So it needs to be not simply that last minute add-on sell, it needs to be part of the journey. And you need to explain to them that, and I know it's hard sometimes to think these things, but you need to explain to them that there are certain things that injectables and lasers, and even, to a degree, a clinical facial cannot do. So you've had your injectables, and you've had your lasers or your IPLs, you've had your gadgets, you've had your therapy, all those things that you're already clinically invested in, but why spend all that money and not look after your skin? Why spend all your money on that and then go back to overstripping your face with a harsh cleanser? Or, in my opinion, understripping your face to a degree with this current mad obsession with double cleansing with balms and oils. There's an educational process here that needs to go on. And I think it's very interesting talking about the difference between the sort of claims that high street brands make and the sort of claims that Neostrata can make. So it's about talking about subjective versus objective. It's talking about, they might say, well, you know, I hate to bring up the brand again, but a brand like Creme de la Mer is a perfect example. So many subjective reports about how it's great if you've got dry skin. And so you'll see a celebrity saying they absolutely love this, or a beauty editor saying they absolutely love it and they've used it and they've invested it and it's wonderful. And there just needs to be an education that says that this is a subjective claim as averse to a clinical objective claim. Because a company like Neostrata, its results lie in its clinical objective claims. And not many skincare companies can say that. Even the companies that talk about active ingredients as opposed to final formulation trials. I don't know whether you want to have that conversation with your patient, but I think you can start that education. I think if a patient starts asking those questions, you should feel free and comfortable and invested in a brand and a skincare brand that can back up its claims. I always say it's not about the sell, it's about education. And I think it's not about the hype, it's about the reality of what skincare can do for you. I've been marketed to and sold to for 27 years as a journalist. And I think, as I said, when I was sort of 26 or 27 and I was new to this journey, I think then I was being talked to by brands who were invested in the mass market, who were invested in high-end, non-clinical skincare. And then I think as I got older, I realised what worked for me, obviously clinical skincare, and I think the sort of shades fell from my eyes. And I think in a way, what you're doing when your patient comes to you, your consumer comes to you, is you're taking them on that journey super fast forward. So you're basically taking 27 years of experience for me and saying, I know where you've been, I know the position you're coming from. I know you're disappointed in skincare, but please don't reject all skincare out of hand. Not all skincare is created equally. Some truly does work. These are the brands that I believe work. Here are our brochures. This isn't an add-on. This is an essential investment in your skin moving forward. In fact, if you invest in proper skincare, in a way I could almost see you less often. You'll laugh. But you know they will still come back for the lasers, they will still come back for the facials, they will still come back for the Botox and fillers. But they will be happier with the texture of their skin. And if you're happier with your texture of your skin, you're more likely to come back and buy more Botox and have more lasers and have more injectables. Because as I said earlier on, Allergan are the company that are now talking about the fact that you need add-on skincare because that will make even the results from cosmetic surgery like facelifts better. People will be happier with the results if they have better texture skin. And one of the things I wanted to say is slightly as a warning to Neostrata to finish off with is that the companies, the high-end companies, the high street companies are coming for your market. I mean, they're not stupid. You know that Johnson & Johnson own Neostrata, you know that L'Oreal own cosmeceuticals. These big companies are looking to absorb the clinical skincare companies because they know where the future of skincare lies. And what they're going to do essentially is try to take that piece of your market. And you can't let them. You're the experts. You know more about skincare than I know, but I know your patients really well. I am one of your patients. You can't let them take away your position of knowledge and your position of clinical excellence. There still needs to be that journey where they walk through the door and they trust you. And they're not trusting you just to do an add-on sell, they're trusting you as the expert, as the doctor, as the nurse, as the clinical practitioner, to provide them with something that they can't get on the high street. But trust me, those high street brands, those L'Oreals, those Estée Lauder, they're going to buy a massive sort of clinical skincare brand soon, and they're going to try and filter down the ingredients and make it available on the high street and make cosmeceuticals claims. The consumer needs to be, your patient needs to be aware that there is a fundamental difference between what they offer and what you offer, and what you offer works.